We're going to teach from the book of Galatians. So great to have the group here today and turn there to that epistle written to the churches that were scattered through the region of Galatia, and that they were pagan people that had turned to Christ and found grace and a new life. They lived in the Spirit, and they understood salvation. In Galatians chapter 3, Paul said he was disappointed. He called them foolish Galatians. I think there's a lot of meaning in that because they had been saved by grace. They were filled with the Spirit. They were very excited about their new life. And they saw that Christ was clearly portrayed among you as crucified in chapter 3, verse 1. O foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you that you should not obey the truth, before whose eyes Jesus Christ was clearly portrayed among you as crucified? So the meaning is that they had found Christ. Let's talk about that for a second. Has anybody here recently met somebody whose life was radically changed by Jesus Christ? Anybody like recently that, okay, Kim has somebody. Anybody else? Like there is a guy in Bible college that told me his testimony, radically changed, the real amazing miracle of salvation. Very good thing. All right. How about in your life, do you remember when you were saved and turned to Christ? Anybody remember like being filled with the Spirit for the first time, or having love in your heart, looking at life like in a new way? The sky is bluer, the grass is greener, people are wonderful, the children are happy, the dog is barking. How beautiful the dog is barking. Life is better. Christ came into my life. I am not guilty. I'm not afraid. I'm not ashamed. I am a child of God. Anybody remember that? Is it a vague memory? No. Okay. So talk to each other about it for a minute. Share your story. Okay, so we have Erhan over here. His story is amazing. He's from an Islamic family, traditional Islamic family. I guess how many sisters and brothers he has? 8. 4 sisters, 4 brothers. He's at one time, the only believer. Then his sister has become a believer. Did she become before you or after you? 1 year after his sister and his prayer that his whole family will come to Christ, Isn't that beautiful? And then for him to be independent of their influence, like walking with Christ, coming to Bible college is a very big deal. Kim has a story, I'm sure, okay, about somebody. You raised your hand, I asked Gary Toft over here, did it ever happen to you that he said he accepted Christ at an early age, but then later in life turned to Christ to learn more, know Jesus, walk with Jesus, and make those decisions. So this has happened in our lives. This is a great fellowship. This is important. So what happened to the Galatians when they had received this and they knew it and they walked in it? Look at chapter 3, please, and verse 2. This only I want to learn from you. Did you receive the Spirit by the works of the law? So I could ask Gary Toff that. I could ask Kim Kellum about the person. I could ask Erhan. I could ask anybody in the room. Did you receive this new life by the works of the law? No. How? But by the hearing of faith. I heard and believed, and God did it. Verse 3. Are you so foolish? Having begun in the Spirit, are you now being made perfect by the flesh? What is it? Are you so foolish that you were born again by faith, by hearing, by grace, and now you've turned to the law, and by the law you are in bondage, you've lost your joy, you've lost your love, you've lost your internal encouragement, but now you are like a dead Christian. There's no life there. There's no deep motivation in your heart. So I talked to a man yesterday who I won't go into detail, but I talked to him. And he was a Catholic, and he stopped going about 10 years ago to the Catholic Church, and I wanted to try to reach him with the gospel. And I told him, I would like to talk to you about God. And then I waited to listen to his response. And he goes, oh, you want to talk about God? I said, yeah. I like to talk about God. Do you like to talk about God? And so we started the talk like that. But I was very relaxed, and I listened to him, and I tried to follow, I like that approach. Like if you can share your faith by really looking for the connection with the person. And I said, he said, he said he keeps the 10 Commandments. Basically, he's saying like that. I'm a good person. I haven't done anything really wrong. I have followed those, but I'm not into organized religion. And I said, I understand that, because that's one thing, but Jesus is another. Jesus is not organized religion. Jesus is God. And I said, you could have a picture of your mother on the wall, and you love your mother, but then when she rings the doorbell and she wants to come into the house, do you answer the door? Do you want to see your mother? Or would you rather have just a photograph of her and in your own mind, love your mother, and that's all that you want? I said, a lot of people want that. They don't want to meet God, but I said, would you like to meet God? And then he said, the doorbell rang for me the other day. And he told about a near-death experience. And he said, this is like the doorbell, But I missed my lead in that one. I missed it because I thought of it later. I said something, but I could have said, but that doorbell is when you die. You're talking about dying, but I'm talking about today. The doorbell rings, and will you accept Jesus into your life today, Anyway, it came out that way anyway. I mean, it was all right. And I was praying for him this morning because I know that anything that you and I say to somebody can be used like an arrow from God to their heart, and the Spirit can do it. The Spirit can speak to them. So how do you get saved? By faith. So now here is the beautiful thing, and I need your help. And it's this phrase in Galatians 4, verse 3, called elements of the world. Do you see it? Galatians 4:3. Even so, we, when we were children, were in bondage under the elements of the world. So that phrase we want to kind of define. Elements of the world. Elements is from a Greek word meaning row or rank. It was used to speak of basic foundational things like the letters of the alphabet. In light of its use in verse 9, it is best to see it here as a reference to the basic elements and rituals of human religion. Paul describes both Jewish and Gentile religions as elemental because they are merely human, never rising to the level of the divine. Let me give some examples. We'll go to verse 9. But now, after you have known God, or rather are known by God, how is it that you turn again to the weak and beggarly elements, to which you desire again to be in bondage? You observe days and months and seasons and years. I am afraid for you, lest I have labored for you in vain. All right? What does it mean? Days, months, seasons, years. Jewish holidays. Pagan holidays. Wasn't Christmas originally a pagan holiday? Wasn't it the winter solstice? Yeah, so the pagans worshiped their gods on that day. I think it was the 23rd, actually, the winter. Maybe they thought it was the 25th. But the Christians took that day and turned it into our holiday, believing that Jesus was born sometime in the fall or the winter time of the year. So I have a few things to say about it, but why don't you do a little exercise on it now? Do any of you have a rabbit foot in your pocket or pocketbook? Do any of you have a talisman? Is it talisman, Pastor Steve? Talisman? Do you have a little St. Christopher medal around your neck to keep you out of trouble or something? Do you have NBA socks that you wore when you played your high school team, and you wear those socks every time you want to win a game? What elements are you submitted to? What are weak and beggarly elements? And give some examples to the person sitting at your table. Okay, anybody from over here? Erhan? No? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yes, right. Yes, we do. Let me repeat it for the internet, okay? Erhan said, you tasted Christ and your freedom and your joy. How would you turn back to the old ways and get subject to old ways and maybe fears and ideas that you might say, I have to do this, to get blessed by God. I have to follow this to be blessed by God. When I found grace and the living God, not based on those beggarly elements, those are not important, like the way the moon is turning or the sun is shining or not. I have one. Remember if a black cat went under a ladder or something? What was that? Bad luck. Well, the word luck is a weak and beggarly element where you relate life like to luck. When we say it's providence or it's blessing or God's will, but we don't say luck, right? My son was born on December 13th. So when in a year it falls on Friday the 13th, oh, it's a black, dark day. Why? Because there is that idea. Where did the idea come? Friday the 13th is what? Is that a cursed day or something? What is it? Horror movie, okay. Oh, Ula studied it out. Yeah, certain hotels or hospitals don't have floor 13. It's 12, 14, or room 13. So we can beg. What now? Okay, we're kind of having fun with the idea, but do you see what the idea is? That actually people's lives are controlled by superstition and just things that happen to stars, horoscope, palm reading, fears that might be in a family tradition or something, and you just say, no, I believe in God. I believe in God. I'm not subject to those things. But what about people that make decisions based on weak and beggarly elements? Like you could actually lose your blessing because you're subject to something stupid and silly. What about a black cat? It's like whatever. It's like it has nothing to do with my world because I live in God. We are above the weak and beggarly elements in our mentality, in our way of thinking. This is not. What about breaking the law like we have the Ten Commandments? And we should be subject. We are subject to them in the Spirit, like we walk in the Spirit and we fulfill them, as Jesus did in Matthew 5:17. But in the case where I fail or I sin, what do? I'm condemned. I'm guilty. Like the law condemns me. Paul said, we are not under that condemnation. We have believed in God. God has forgiven us. We stand in grace. We walk by faith. God's blood is bigger than my sin. God's redemption is greater than any beggarly elements in the world, including the law of Moses and circumcision. Because these pagans are now turning to be Jews, and they want to be circumcised as a sign of being a Jew, And Paul says circumcision is nothing. Isn't it Galatians 5:2? Circumcision is nothing. That's not how you live. You live by faith in God and grow in grace and have love out of your heart. Okay, so go to this change in these people is seen in the following verses. And he says, verse 12, "Brethren, I urge you to become like me, for I became like you." Oh, that's loaded, I think. You become like me, I became like you. You are pagans without the law. I want you to be like me, and I became like you to reach you and give you a message of grace and teach you the gospel. And you have not injured me at all. There's a better translation is, you have not hurt me at all. You have not hurt me at all. You know that because of physical infirmity, I preached the gospel to you at the first. The meaning he had an eye disease or he was sick. Listen to this part. He is sick when he comes to the Galatians, and he's preaching to them. And how do they see him? Usually, when somebody comes to you to minister to you, and they have infirmity, let's say, I don't know, they have COVID, okay? The preacher's got COVID, okay? He came to the church. The preacher's got COVID. It's like, oh, that's horrible. But Paul said, when I came to you with infirmity, you treated me like an angel of God. Like you saw me, and you didn't even see my infirmity. You saw me as an angel of God. That's beautiful. Like, I didn't disappoint you with my infirmity. I actually saw the Holy Spirit in you guys, and you ministered to me this way. I don't know if you get that, but it's a very, very cool thing. Verse 14, "In my trial, which was in my flesh, you did not despise or reject, but you received me as an angel of God, even as Christ Jesus." Wow. Just one time, Casey Bright, she's now Casey Shibley. This is in the 70s. This is a long time ago. She was a young Bible college student. She came to Finland. Back then, we didn't have internet. We didn't have, cell phones and stuff. But when she came, this young girl came to us in Finland to be with us for a little while. I treated her like the Apostle Paul because that's how I heard her. Like everything she said, like tell me what's going on and talk to me. She would share from messages. She'd just tell about people back home in the church. We were living in Finland. She was a visitor. I treated her like the Apostle Paul. I thought she was amazing, and she was and is amazing. This is the spirit of the church, the spirit of God that is in the church. How we, even if you have a disability, we could treat you as an angel of God because God is with us. But the Galatians changed to reject Paul. Like they changed, they became hard. They became legalistic. They became judgmental. They became like, because when you worship beggarly, you become subject to beggarly elements. And in this case, it could be, somebody could say, I'm in greater grace, I'm in greater grace, what church are you in? I'm in greater grace. It's like, who are you? What are you talking about? Greater grace is like, are you treating, isn't it just something like, do you know God? Are you proud about the church you are in, or are you spirit-filled and talking about Jesus? Are you talking about Jesus? That's like when we lived in Europe, there are people saying, the Bible Speaks and Pastor Carl Stevens, and there was like, this is where we came from, and that's important. But that's not my message. My message is not the Bible Speaks. My message is not Carl Stevens. It's not Greater Grace. My message is what? It's God. It's Christ. It's God. The Spirit of God is here. Jesus is here. I am free because of Jesus. I love the Bible because of Jesus, you know. How about this room? Is this room important? It's a beggarly element. God uses the room, but the minute God is out of the room, there's nothing here. This is an empty room. Just go back to South Berwick or go back to Lenox, and there's nothing there. Because there's nothing there unless God is there. If God is there, then this is awesome. But if God is not there, it is not. It's a beggarly element. You know, people could look at their Bible that way too. You know, I read the Bible. You know, I'm reading the Bible. I am reading the Bible every day. It's protecting me. It's like a rabbit's foot around my neck. It's like, yeah, you know, you're going to get caught because beggarly elements cannot finish the job. It's only Christ that starts it and finishes it. It's Christ is the answer, and the Spirit of Christ, and the love of God, and the wisdom of God, and the mind of God. And if it's in the presence, if it's in Greater Grace World Outreach, that is incredible. But it may not be. The Spirit of God left Jerusalem. The Spirit of God left the temple. Ichabod. God is gone. God is gone. You know what I mean? So what does it do? It brings me back to seeking God. I seek God. This is what Paul is saying. There was a time you loved me so much you would have plucked your eyes out for me. Let's read it. Let's start from 15. What then was the blessing you enjoyed? For I bear you witness that if possible you would have plucked out your own eyes and given them to me. Have I become your enemy because I tell you the truth? Like, that's very cool. Like, I'm going to tell you, people, that you have drifted off into this very weak religious mindset that leads you to judge and be hard and to be cold and critical. There was a time when you were so passionate and loving, and so when I came to you weak with sickness, you treated me like an angel of God, and you would have plucked out your eyes from me. You love me so much. But now that's over. You become cold, legalistic, hard-hearted, narrow, judgmental, and that kind of thing. One time, there was a change in one of our churches, and they said, you know, we don't do rap sessions anymore, you know. We don't do rap. It was kind of like folding the arms, and, you know, we are in Greater Grace, you know, or we are in the Bible Speaks. We always do rap sessions. We don't do rap sessions anymore, you know. And they're kind of like have that attitude. And I was thinking, yeah, I understand. Like, what, do we pull out a manual and say that after the service, there's like an obligation to do a rap session, you know, after the service, because like that's the way you learned and that's the way it's supposed to be? Or is your world bigger than like the form? It's not the form. It's the person. It's not the picture of your mother on the wall. It says she's at the door, and she rings the bell, and receive her, and understand that God is here. And that's the thing that the Galatians were losing. And that's the thing that can happen in any church at any time and in any Christian's life. And just make sure it doesn't happen. How do I, three things. Number one, humility. And I mean humility, and get used to feeling broken, maybe shame, maybe guilt, maybe fear. Humble me, and may I be submitted to God. Number two, learn about God. Talk about God. Learn about God and worship God. and keep God your focus. The church is not my focus. God is my focus. Be careful. The church is operating and Jesus is outside knocking on the door and saying, hey, anybody can hear my voice because I am not in your game. I am not in that game. I am not there. But I'm with the contrite and broken. Yeah, those are the people that I'm walking with. And then number 3 is prayer. Have a life of prayer all the time. And we'll keep ourselves out of a lot of trouble. We'll do a lot of loving, and we'll have a lot of freedom, and we'll be living probably out of the box. And the beggarly elements will be there screaming. And we say, we had a party on Friday the 13th, and we had black cats all over the place. And we just lived it up. We had NBA socks on our heads and everything. We just had a beautiful time. We're out of the box because our God is not like your God. Okay? Amen.